Come, let down the weight of the day. Let your body grow heavy and your mind grow quiet. Simply breathe in and breathe out, finding a slow, easy rhythm. With each breath, allow yourself to drift, drifting away from the here and now and back in time. We are drifting to a time of incredible wonder, to 16th century India, the age of the great Mughal Empire. The sun has just set over the grand city of Fatehpur Sikri, a magnificent city built of red sandstone, which now glows with the soft, warm ember light of the day's last sunbeams. Within the imperial palace, the heat of the day has softened into a pleasant coolness. The vast courtyards are quiet now. The faint scent of jasmine and rose from the royal gardens hangs in the air, carried on a gentle evening breeze. Flickering lamps cast long, dancing shadows on intricately carved walls. In the grand hall of private audience, the Diwan-i-Khas, we find the Emperor of Hindustan, Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar. Akbar is a man of boundless curiosity, not just a ruler of lands, but a seeker of truth, a patron of art, of knowledge, and a man who loved a clever mind more than a mountain of jewels. And by his side, in comfortable, easy silence, sits his most trusted friend and an advisor of incredible wit, Birbal. Their minds found comfort in each other's company. Akbar's expansive curiosity was perfectly met by Birbal's profound and often humorous wisdom. Their friendship was a quiet cornerstone of the mighty empire, a friendship that rested on understanding. And so, allow your mind to settle here, in the calm and quiet of the emperor's court, as our first story begins. It is a story about a most unusual student, and a lesson that was not for the simple animal, but for the men surrounding the throne. One evening, much like this one, a few of the courtiers, always eager to test Birbal's favored position, decided to pose a challenge to the emperor. They were often quietly resentful of Birbal's quick mind and the emperor's deep affection for him. They whispered amongst themselves, their voices a low drone, like bees in a distant clover field. One of them bowed low before Akbar and said, "Your Highness, your court is blessed with the most talented artists, poets, and musicians in all the land. But we wonder, if your Tonson can teach a man to sing with the voice of an angel, surely your wise Birbal can teach a donkey to sing." The other courtiers concealed their smirks. It was a foolish, impossible challenge, designed to make Birbal look like a fool. A gentle humming silence fell over the hall. Emperor Akbar looked at Birbal. A tiny, curious smile played on his lips. He saw the trap, but he also saw an opportunity for his friend's legendary wit to shine. His voice was calm, almost playful. "Well, Birbal," the emperor said softly, "you have heard the question. A musical education for a donkey. Can it be done?" Birbal bowed his head, his expression as peaceful and untroubled as a still lake at dawn. There was no worry in his eyes, only a calm acceptance. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice even and smooth, "it is a difficult task, certainly. Animals of that nature can be stubborn students. But nothing is impossible with the right resources and enough time. I will need 6 months, Your Highness, and a private study for my new pupil, along with a purse of gold for his educational expenses." The court murmured. They were surprised he had not simply refused. Emperor Akbar, ever gracious and intrigued, agreed at once. A fine house with a walled garden was provided for Birbal and his unusual new student, and the gold was delivered. The jealous courtiers went away, feeling pleased, certain that in 6 months Birbal's failure would be complete. The weeks and months drifted by, as quiet days do. The sun would rise, warming the sandstone walls of the garden where the donkey lived. The moon would cast silver light on the leaves of the mango tree that gave it shade. Birbal would visit, but not with an instrument or a songbook. He simply provided good food, fresh water, and a place of peace for the creature. Inside the quiet house, Birbal used the time for his own studies, reading histories, poetry, and philosophy. The time was not wasted, not at all. Peace and patience were the true tutors in this house. Finally, the 6 months were nearing their end. The court was buzzing with quiet anticipation. The courtiers who had laid the trap began to whisper more boldly, imagining their moment of triumph. The day of the demonstration arrived. The court gathered again in the cool evening light. Guards led the donkey into the center of the audience hall. It stood there, calmly blinking in the lamplight. Emperor Akbar settled onto his throne, his gaze soft as he looked at his friend. "Well, Birbal," he said, his voice a low rumble, "6 months have passed. We are eager to hear this recital." Birbal bowed, serene as ever. He walked towards the donkey. He did not ask him to sing. Instead, he simply stood quietly beside him for a very long moment. The donkey, seeing only the gentle man who had brought it food for so many months, did what donkeys do. It let out a long, loud, and thoroughly unmusical bray. Hee-haw! The sound echoed in the great hall. It was not a song. It was the simple, honest voice of a donkey. The jealous courtiers burst into muffled laughter. They had won. Birbal had failed spectacularly. But Birbal did not flinch. He turned to the emperor, his face calm and radiating peaceful wisdom. "Your Majesty," he began gently, his voice like a calm river, "I did my very best. Every day I attempted to teach my student the gentle ragas and the rhythms of our finest court music." He paused, letting his words settle in the now quiet room. "However," he continued, "my student was very stubborn and very influenced by his family. He explained to me that he could only learn from them." Birbal then gestured, not at the donkey, but with a subtle, sweeping hand towards the group of snickering courtiers. "And whenever I walked through the court, I would hear his relatives teaching him their song. He then perfectly mimicked the drowning, conspiratorial whispering, hum, 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 hum. When donkey listens to donkey," Birbal concluded softly, "he learns the donkey's song. It seems he could only learn the braying he heard day in and day out from his kin. I taught him a song of wisdom, but he chose to listen to the sound of foolishness." A profound, deep silence filled the hall.
The courtiers' faces flushed scarlet. Their laughter had died on their lips. The foolish bray they had hoped to hear from the animal had been shown to be their own. Emperor Akbar leaned back, and a slow, warm smile spread across his face. It was not a smile of victory, but of deep understanding. He began to laugh, a soft, appreciative chuckle that filled the space with warmth and relief. The lesson had been delivered, not with anger, but with perfect, gentle wit. The wisdom of the moment was so clear, so peaceful. It was not about punishing jealous men, but about understanding a simple truth. The company you keep, the voices you choose to listen to, will become your song.
And so the story ends, and the quiet returns to the great hall. The donkey's final bray has long since faded, replaced by the soft whisper of the desert wind rustling through the palace gardens. The air is cool and still, and heavy with the scent of closing night flowers. Emperor Akbar and his wise friend Birbal sit in the soft pools of lamplight, a shared silence between them that speaks of long years of friendship and understanding. Akbar glances at Birbal, a deep, thoughtful look in his eyes. The last whisper of his laughter has settled into a peaceful contentment. He thought of the different kinds of foolishness in the world and the different kinds of wisdom. True wisdom, he realized, was not a loud performance. It was a quiet knowing, a gentle light. It was a subject that endlessly fascinated him. As if hearing his thought, Birbal spoke, his voice as smooth as polished river stone. "A thought rests on your mind, Your Majesty." Akbar sighed, a sound of peaceful curiosity. "Just so, Birbal. Your cleverness reminds me that word of our court's wit has traveled far. In fact, it has invited a puzzle." And with that, he signaled to a high-ranking attendant. A sense of gentle motion filled the hall as a new figure was led respectfully forward. He was an envoy from a neighboring kingdom, a land known for its proud and clever king. The envoy bowed deeply, his silken robes making no sound on the cool marble floor. He carried himself with a quiet dignity, speaking not of war or treaties, but of something far more curious. He presented a message from his king, expressed with a flourish of deep respect for Emperor Akbar. His king, he explained, had heard tales of the brilliant minds that graced the Mughal court. He was so impressed, in fact, that he wished for a taste of this famous wisdom. He wanted what he called a pot full of wit. With great care, the envoy placed a clay pot before the emperor. It was an ordinary terracotta pot, simple and plain. But its lid was sealed tightly with hard wax, and on the seal was the insignia of the rival Ping. The request was clear, yet impossible. The king wished for Akbar to send him the pot, filled with wit. But there were two conditions, spoken softly by the envoy. The pot could not be broken, and the wax seal could not be removed. A long, slow silence filled the great hall. Akbar's other viziers and courtiers leaned forward, their brows furrowed in thought. Their minds raced, but found no path. How could one fill a pot that was already sealed? How could you place something inside without opening it? It felt like a riddle in a dream, one that dissolved each time you grasped for a solution. Emperor Akbar looked at the pot, then at the perplexed faces of his courtiers, and finally his gaze came to rest on Birbal. In Birbal's expression, there was no anxiety, no struggle. merely a serene acceptance, a quiet curiosity. It was as if he were simply admiring the pattern of moonlight on the floor. After a long, pleasant moment, Birbal bowed his head slightly. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice a balm in the quiet room, "a truly thoughtful gift deserves a thoughtful response. If you would entrust this puzzle to me, I believe I can prepare the pot of wit as requested. I will only need a few weeks and a quiet sunlit corner of the royal gardens." A soft wave of relief seemed to move through the room. When Birbal was confident, everyone else could afford to be at peace. Akbar simply nodded, a trusting smile returning to his face. "As you wish, Birbal, the pot is yours." The envoy was escorted to comfortable chambers to await the answer, and a deep peace settled once more. The court could rest. The riddle was in good hands. The very next morning, as the sun began to warm the earth, Birbal carried the sealed pot from the cool palace halls into the fragrant air of the emperor's gardens. He walked past rows of perfect roses and symmetrical fountains that cast rainbow mist into the air. He found an out-of-the-way patch of rich soil where golden sunlight fell for most of the day. Gently, so gently, he set the pot down on its side. Then, from his pocket, he took out a very small, very new melon seed and planted it in the moist earth, just next to the pot's narrow opening. And now began the lesson, a lesson not of speed, but of patience. The story now slows to the pace of nature itself. Days turned into soft, quiet weeks. Each day, Birbal would come and water the land around the pot. Slowly, peacefully, a tiny green sprout pushed its way from the dark earth into the light. It was so small, but so determined. You could feel the plant's gentle work of growing, the quiet pull of life reaching for the sun. The sprout grew into a tendril, a delicate green vine exploring the world around it. Birbal, with a single gentle finger, guided that tiny seeking vine right into the small opening of the terracotta pot. Now, inside the cool darkness of the sealed pot, the vine continued to grow, secure, safe, unseen. And nourished by sun and water from the outside, a small flower bloomed inside the pot, and then gave way to a tiny growing fruit. A small melon began to form, taking its shape within the safe, dark confines of the sealed vessel. All this time passed in a long, slow rhythm, dreamlike and unhurried. The sun warmed the pot, the nights cooled it. The melon inside grew steadily, quietly, becoming larger and larger until it filled the clay pot almost completely. It was now a pot full of something, a pot full of a life that grew from patience and quiet care. When the melon had grown in the pot so large that it could no longer fit through the narrow opening it had entered as a tiny vine, Birbal knew the time was right. He cut the vine and lifted the pot. He carried it back to the ground hall where the emperor and the visiting envoy were once again assembled. The mood was calm, expectant. Birbal wordlessly presented the sealed pot to the envoy. The wax seal of his king was still intact. The clay pot was still unbroken. Yet it was now discernibly heavy, full of something. The envoy took it and looked through the small opening. He could see the familiar shape and color of a mature melon inside. He tried to slide it out, but of course it would not budge. Birbal finally spoke, his voice gentle and clear. "My friend, please give your king this message. Here is his pot of wit, filled as he requested. The seal is unbroken, the pot is whole. We ask only that he remove the wit without breaking its container, just as we had to put it in."
A slow smile of dawning admiration spread across the envoy's face. He understood. The cleverness was not in the melon itself, it was in the patience, the understanding of nature, the wisdom to let a solution grow rather than forcing one. He had asked for wit, and Birbal had given him wisdom. The proof was right there in his hands, real, solid, and undeniably clever. That evening, the matter was concluded not with triumph, but with deep mutual respect. No one had been made a fool. Everyone had learned something. The truest wit, you see, is not a sword to defeat an opponent. It is a light, one that can show a hidden path, a peaceful solution that no one had thought to look for. And as you settle deeper now, feel your own mind growing quiet. Let all the hard puzzles of the day begin to soften at the edges. Let them become unimportant. Understand that some solutions do not come from striving, but from resting. Allow them to grow in the quiet darkness of your sleep, nourished by peace and patience. They will be there for you when the morning comes. For now, there is only rest, drifting, floating, in perfect, quiet peace, down, down, into tranquil sleep.
The gentle rhythm of the palace gardens continues, a rhythm of patient, quiet growth. And in that same spirit, our story continues, finding its own unhurried pace. Feel your body sinking further into softness, letting go of any lingering tension. Your breathing is slow and steady, in and out, a peaceful, natural cadence, like the soft fall of sand in an hourglass. The tale of the pot of wit had pleased Emperor Akbar deeply. It was not merely the cleverness he admired, but the peace it brought. A challenge met not with a boast, but with a quiet lesson from nature. In the days that followed, a sense of thoughtful calm settled over the court. The emperor often found himself musing on the nature of fairness, how true justice, like a healthy plant, brings life and harmony, while injustice chokes it. It was in this contemplative frame of mind that Akbar held his daily audience, the Durbar-e-Am. This was the time when any citizen, from the richest merchant to the humblest laborer, could bring their petition directly to the ear of the emperor. It was a cornerstone of Mughal administration, a promise of justice accessible to all, a vast and complex system that ultimately rested on the quiet faith that the ruler would be wise. One peaceful morning, under the great arches of the Hall of Public Audience, a man stepped forward. He was a simple farmer, his face weathered by the sun, his hands calloused from honest work. His name was Bolaram, and he stood with a worried yet hopeful expression on his face. He bowed low, his traditional cotton dhoti whispering on the polished stone floor. Emperor Akbar leaned forward, his voice kind. "Speak, good man, what troubles you?" The farmer's voice was respectful and clear, yet held a tremor of confusion. "Your Majesty, I come for justice. I have been treated unfairly by my neighbor, Ghanshyam." He explained. He was a man of modest means and had recently saved enough money to buy a well from his neighbor. In a land where the sun could be harsh and the rains unpredictable, owning a well was life itself. It meant water for his family, for his small plot of vegetables, for his tired old bullock. The papers were signed, the money was paid, the well was his.
Bolaram's heart was full of gratitude, and he slept that night with the serene peace of a man whose future felt secure. But the next morning, when he went to draw the first bucket of cool, life-giving water, his neighbor Ghanshyam was there, a sly, self-satisfied look on his face. "What are you doing, Bolaram?" his neighbor had asked. "You cannot take water from this well." The farmer was baffled. "But Ghanshyam, brother, I bought the well from you yesterday. It is mine." And here the neighbor revealed his cruel trick. "Indeed," he smirked, "you bought the well. You did not, however, buy the water inside it. The water is still mine. If you wish to use any, you must pay me for it." The farmer was stunned into silence. He could not believe this level of dishonest cunning. But the neighbor had a verbal trap set, and Bolaram did not know how to argue his way out. So he had come to the emperor's court, his last and only hope for a just resolution. The court, a low murmur passed through the assembled courtiers. It was an absurd claim, yet one tied up in such tricky logic that it was difficult to unpick. Akbar, too, was annoyed, but also intrigued by the strange puzzle. How does one deliver justice in a case so twisted? As always, when a knot of logic seemed too tight to undo, the emperor's gaze sought out the calm presence of Birbal, who was standing quietly among the ministers, listening with placid attention. "Birbal," the emperor said, his voice carrying through the quiet hall, "you have heard the case. This man has sold his well, but not his water. How do we find the shape of justice here?" Birbal stepped forward. He bowed to the emperor, then turned his gaze to the farmer and his smirking neighbor, who had also been summoned. His face was gentle. There was no anger, no judgment. He looked upon the scene with the same peaceful curiosity with which he had once looked at a sealed pot. He first addressed the sly neighbor, Ghanshyam. His voice was soft, almost conversational. "So it is your claim that you sold your well, but retained ownership of the water within it?" Ghanshyam puffed out his chest, smelling victory. "Exactly, noble sir. The document says the well, nothing about the water." "I see," Birbal said, nodding slowly, as if accepting the premise. Then he turned his mild, thoughtful gaze upon the man. "Well then," Birbal continued, his voice still gentle and even, "if the well belongs to this good farmer, and the water in the well belongs to you, then you are keeping your property on his land." A soft hush fell, more profound this time. Birbal went on, "You are, in essence, using his well to store your water. Surely you must pay him rent for that." Ghanshyam's smirk wavered. His mind, which had felt so sharp just a moment ago, began to spin, caught in his own trap. "Indeed," Birbal continued, the simple, undeniable logic flowing like a clear stream. "I think a fair rent would be 2 silver coins a day for the storage of your water in his well. Or, alternatively," he paused, giving the man a moment to comprehend the turning tide. But you could remove all of your water from his well immediately, so it can feel whatever way the farmer chooses." The neighbor's face turned from smug to confused to pale with panic. Remove all the water and pay rent. The clever trap had snapped shut upon himself. Before the assembled court, his petty greed was laid bare, not by force, but by the gentle illumination of true wisdom. He fell to his knees, stammering apologies to the farmer and to the emperor. Justice had found him, not as a sword, but as a perfect, inescapable mirror showing him his own folly. Of course, the farmer received his well and the right to use the water within it. Harmony was restored. Balance returned. The small ripple of deceit on the calm pond of daily life was smoothed away, leaving only peace. And so, my friend, allow that sense of perfect, peaceful balance to settle over you. Let every problem, every worry become light. Understand that every knot can be undone. Every tangled thread can be gently straightened. Sometimes the solutions are not found in struggle, but in a quiet change of perspective. Just as the balance was restored in the farmer's life, feel a sense of balance returning to you. Everything is as it should be. All is at peace, all is well. Let your busy mind finally rest upon this thought. Let it be still, and surrender to the deep, healing quiet of the night, just breathing, softly, slowly, drifting away on an endless river of calm.